As I mentioned before, we are bringing up members of all four legislative caucuses to have a few minutes to discuss their priorities. Coming up here in just a moment, we have House Democratic leader Ranjit Puri, just brand new to this job in January, as well as Representative Stephanie Young from Detroit. House Democrats made the transition from being in the majority last year to the minority this year, and so their needs to pass legislation have changed, and they have to be incredibly bipartisan, and my view is they're doing the best job they can with that. They are incredibly active in Lansing, standing up for their priorities and making sure that the voices of their constituents are heard. So with that, Russ, I'm going to hand it back to you. Leader Puri and Representative Young.
Hello, everybody. So we get to talk about the state of the Democratic Party. Is that what's going on here?
Whatever you want to talk about. We're excited.
Sounds great. So the Tigers are playing pretty. I guess we'll keep it to politics. So how are we feeling in the Michigan House right now? 2 years of Democratic control, and now we're back to Republican control. It seems like business is kind of slowed down to a bit of a crawl. How are we feeling right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, just to be clear, the Democrats do still control the Senate. Yes, and the AG's office, and there was a shift in the House, and I think, by and large, we are disappointed with the lack of progress that's been made so far. I think there's only been 4 public acts signed, making us one of the least productive legislatures in the last 50 years, if I'm not mistaken, and so, that's not what we signed up for. There's plenty of room for compromise and getting things done. So really hope that the Speaker and the Republican caucus find a way to actually get some PAs signed into law.
Are you optimistic that that's going to happen?
Well, I hope it will. I mean, there's been precedent. I think about when I first started. So in my 3rd term, we started in the minority. And we were able to get things done under the previous Speaker during that time. And I'm thinking, there's no reason why we can't now. So that causes me to have optimism.
All right. So what are the priorities coming out of this?
Out of what?
Oh, you're in the minority now. You don't get to control anything, but what are your priorities? Like the things that you're sticking to and you're trying to get done in working with House Speaker Matt Hall.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that there was a tremendous amount of work that was done last term. We've seen evidence of that working. The priority has to be making the lives of everyday Michiganders better. Finding ways to make things just easier and better for the working class, making sure that Michigan has a thriving economic prosperity, that small businesses are succeeding, that companies want to come to Michigan, call Michigan home. So I think if there are ways to continue to lower costs, make housing more affordable, make child care more accessible, lower the cost of prescription drugs, those are things that are, I think, common sense, shouldn't get caught up in the partisan divide. And those are popular in kind of all corners of our state and ways that, again, can just improve the lives of Michiganders.
Yeah, what was something that didn't happen last term that you'd still like to make sure that there is some kind of compromise there that you can get through?
There's something particular that you want? Well, there are a number of things that didn't happen last term. But I'll just talk about something more recent. I just had a conversation. I deal a lot with our young people. Child welfare is huge for me. And there was a package of bills as it relates to tobacco-free kids. And wanting to be certain that our young people understand the dangers of nicotine. And then fighting, I'm like, where did that come from? And then fighting to make certain that we have those types of resources so that folks know that they're prepared, young people can make smart decisions for a healthier life. And when we look at potential cuts to things like Medicaid, and we're talking about child welfare, and we understand that so many of our young people have their health insurance by way of Medicaid, it makes me really, really concerned. And so I'm hoping that we can work with our Speaker to see the need, because I tell people these aren't partisan. This is not partisan. Children don't have any idea what a Republican is or a Democrat. They just know that now when I go to school, I have breakfast when I didn't used to. Now, when I go to school, I have lunch when I didn't used to. And these are things that we were able to get done in the last term, and we got to protect right now.
Yeah, I think for us, it's, I never thought we'd be in a world where things like feeding our kids at school would be publicized as a partisan issue. And the reality is last term is last term, and the politics and the environment do change and evolve. And there's a lot of economic uncertainty that's coming out of the federal policies. The way the trade war and tariffs go is going to impact Michigan disproportionately than other states. We are a state that prides ourselves with a heavy trade border. We have a thriving automotive industry. We have an agriculture sector here that's dependent on international trade. And so when you see those policies come about, those things like tariffs, for example, they might make sense in places like Oklahoma and Alabama maybe, but in Michigan, given our proximity to an international trade partner, a strong trade allyship with the country of Mexico, those things are going to impact us. And so as Chair Young was mentioning, if there is going to be economic uncertainty originating out of the policies from DC, we need to be fighting back against that in Lansing, to making sure that our state is not disproportionately affected, that so many of our funds, 42% of our state budget comes from federal monies. And so if that money is not flowing into our state, what can we do to shore up those gaps and those voids? The reality is that we can't solve all of it. That money just doesn't exist at the state level to do all of that and to make up for all of that. But what can we do to protect, again, just our most vulnerable communities around the state, to making sure that we're actually making their lives better and easier, and again, not tougher, and in this kind of manufactured crisis.
Should folks be bracing for cuts to services through MDHHS and some of the smaller programs within the state of Michigan, the community programs?
Should they be bracing for cuts?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have a magic 8-ball, but I can tell you I have no indication and reason to think that they shouldn't be they should not be bracing, right? There is a tremendous amount of economic uncertainty. There's billions of dollars at stake. These are very real issues. And we talk about these things in such a grander form of billions of dollars, people losing access to health care, schools being disproportionately affected, SNAP benefits being pulled. Those are very big picture ideas, but what those end up looking like is if you are a single parent in rural Michigan in the UP, as we're up here today, hospitals are going to close. And if you have a child that has an emergency, you're going to be driving hours to go get access to health care. Teachers are going to be fired in droves, and hundreds of teachers in individual districts will be fired if a budget is not done at the state level. And again, if you localize that message to the local level, I know in urban centers, that means that classroom sizes are going to balloon to maybe over 30 kids in a class.
Right. After the work we did to lower classroom sizes, then we see the work going in reverse. It shouldn't be.
And so, I think there's a crossroads where there's just two different visions that are being presented. I mean, House Democrats are united in the sense where we want to provide opportunity for Michiganders. We want to invest in our kids. We want to invest in our state. We want to invest in our infrastructure. We want to invest in our healthcare. We want to make sure people are thriving. And then there's the kind of the DC and the House Republican way of doing things, which is just to sow doubt, pit people against each other, tax breaks for the ultra wealthy and the well-connected, and these things don't need to be partisan. I just want to make that there's a distinct choice here, and there's two paths that we can go, and we're firmly set on understanding that there's a way in which we can pass a baseline budget that doesn't have these wild pendulum swings, in which people are uplifted, and we're finding a way to make things easier for the people of Michigan.
Is the difference between House Democrats and House Republicans, is it about methods? Like, you're trying to get to the same place and you have different ways of doing it, or is it we just don't want to do this at all?
I don't know that we're trying to get to the same place when you look at some of the priorities, right? So for me, that we can't be getting to the same place when your initial budget from March, defunds healthcare. That's not the same place. That's not the same place for us. we know that's the place to start. I believe that you fund those things that are important to you. My leader, he hears me say all the time, a society will be judged, it's the African proverb, a society is judged by how well they take care of their children and how well they take care of their seniors. And when we look at program cuts, particularly that will impact these demographic, these groups of people, our young people and our seniors, then we will get a failing grade based on a March budget that came out of the House that didn't have any input from us.
I don't want to impugn the motives of my colleagues, and I don't want to make assumptions, but I think Chair Young is very astutely saying, I don't know if we have the same goals.
Right.
I want to be very clear. The House Democrats have zero interest in closing hospitals around the state. The House Democrats are not the ones that passed a budget that defunds schools by 25%, that inflates classroom sizes to above over 30 kids. Those are all choices being made, right? We don't need to have a trade war right now. We don't need to be questioning who our foreign allies are around the world. We don't need to be finding $4 trillion federally to make sure that these tax cuts for the ultra wealthy are put into place. These are all choices that are being made. And so to answer your question, if we have the same goal, then the answer is no, right? Very matter-of-factly, no. We understand that we could have a more baseline budget passed that continues services as normals. And of course, every legislator wants to find efficiencies to make sure government is running as efficient as possible. But that does not need to be done by wild pendulum swings and taking a chainsaw to the budget and cutting out trillions of dollars. That's not how the institutions were designed. And again, I will stand up here and say this over and over again. We don't need to be having hospitals closed. That is a choice that Republicans are making.
Is Michigan that kind of sounds like Michigan's a little bit over-reliant on federal money. Some of that coming back to us if, granted, these planned cuts to Medicaid would be devastating to rural hospitals and rural clinics across northern Michigan, across the Upper Peninsula, and make things very difficult for hospitals in urban areas. But is there any way that we can start taking some state money and kind of helping out those rural clinics and rural hospitals?
By and large, no.
Okay.
We don't have the money at the state level to fill that gap. And I don't have the exact statistics, but Michigan's not that out of line in terms of nationally about how much federal money comes to our state, right? Even some of the other states are way more dependent on federal funds than Michigan is. But Michigan is, I believe, the 9th largest state in the country, if I'm not mistaken. And so we have a significant budget. An $84 billion budget is not small peanuts. That's a lot of money. And when 42% of that is predicated on federal monies, and the economic uncertainty originating is going to impact us one way or another. Are there small stopgaps we can take temporarily? Sure, yes. But there's no way we can fill the voids of the billions of dollars that are at stake federally.
I know. And then there's one thing, we talk about federal dollars, and then when I'm in my community, we're quick to be reminded that if you're working, you got that FICA. It's like you're just getting your own money back.
Yeah.
So nobody's doing us any favors when we talk about federal dollars. These are our dollars that we're investing in government to help us have smooth government here at home in Michigan.
It sounds like the kind of stalemate in the House isn't going to end anytime soon. Is there anything that Democrats can do to kind of soften up Speaker Hall and try to so they're not passing more legislation without Democrat input?
Well, the reality is we're in split government. And so as much as Matt Hall wants to posture and scream from the mountaintops, what he says does not become holy gospel. In split government, it is not mathematically possible for the Speaker to pass laws out of the House and make them public acts by himself. And so I'm hoping that he comes to the realization that he needs to work in a true bipartisan way and a bicameral way to make sure that pieces of legislation are actually being signed into law. And in the absence of him doing that, we're going to remain in gridlock and the stalemate.
Yeah, it's been done before. We can absolutely do it. I remain optimistic.
Yeah, and the reality is as Chair Young mentioned, I mean, this is not the first time Michigan's found itself in split government.
That's
right.
We don't need to recreate the wheel here. There's nothing novel about working together with the other side of the aisle. It's been done many times.
Right. Well, that's all the time we have.
Great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the conversation today.
Great. Thanks so much.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, these weird chairs.
Well, thank you to our guests, Representative Puri, Representative Young. It was a great conversation, and thank you to our sponsor for Live from Mackinac, DTE Energy. Providing this program has been a real service, not only to folks who are attending this conference, but folks who are watching at home.